Okay, so when we last let off, I was in the process of torquing down the connecting rod caps. Okay, I've got all those done. Sorry, my camera unfortunately ran out of storage space, so I just went ahead and finished cranking them down, torquing them, and emptying out the camera, and now I'm back. But suffice it to say, this is done, and we are almost done with the lower block, or the short block, I guess, as the book calls it. There's one thing I didn't do. I have to go back and do, and that is this plug right here. See this coolant, this water plug. Um, Now the reason now I'm going to pause for a moment because look at this table. Remember, this table was full of parts. It's starting to clear out now. So I'm very, very happy about that. It's clearing out because they are all going into the engine here. So we're making some good progress. So anyway, here's the plug. Here's the new plug that I'm going to use. And I'm like, how on earth do I mean, I don't have an Allen wrench or I don't have a tool to turn that. Okay, so it's quite obvious what happens here. So you stick that in here and get it threaded. Okay, but how on earth do you tighten it? Okay, it needs to be torqued according to my book here. It needs to be torqued to 44 pounds. So I went to Lowe's and I went to the tool section and I'm looking in the Allen wrenches area, trying to figure out, okay, do they have one that big? I took the plug with me and couldn't find anything. So finally an associate or a store worker or whatever who worked on the tools came over and I showed it to him and he's like, man, I don't know if we have an Allen wrench that big. He says, so we went out and we looked and then he said to me, he says, the mechanics that I know that put these in, here's what they do. They go get themselves a bolt, right? Like, um, this is an M10, okay? And then what they do is they put the head of the bolt in the in this part of the plug, and they drop that in there, and then they just use a deep socket to turn it, to tighten it. And I'm like, my God, that's so easy. You know, usually I could think of things like that, but it just hadn't occurred to me. So anyway, there's my tip of the day. If you're wondering, do you need to go get a special kind of Allen wrench for that guy? Just get yourself an M10 bolt and a couple nuts to go on it here. Ooh, where's my camera at? Here it is. And then you can stick that in there and tighten it down. All right, just like I'm showing here. So, tip of the day. Thanks to that associate there at Lowe's who helped me out. That was a huge help. And hey, I think I got what, $4, maybe $3 invested in this. Probably a lot cheaper than a special Allen wrench. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and stick this in and tighten it down to 44 foot-pounds is what the book says. And this one already has, this new one has the coating. This is brand new, so it's got the coating on the threads. All right, so we don't need to put any kind of special sealant or anything on here. We're just gonna seal this, put this in here and thread it by hand to get started. And then we're gonna 17 millimeter, by the way. We're gonna stick that in there. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my fancy torque wrench and set this guy to 44 pounds. All right, 44 foot-pounds. I'm going to use a little stuff just to get it snug. Speed this process up. All right. All right. So here we are, final assembly. We've done, we installed the screw-in engine block plugs. We installed press-in plugs. We installed the main bearings. We put the crankshaft into a block. We installed the main bearing caps and bolts. That's all done. Everything's torqued. We tightened the inner main bearing cap bolts. We tightened the outer main cap bolts and side bolts. We assembled the pistons to the connecting rods. We determined the piston ring clocking. We installed the oil support ring. We installed the oil rings. We installed the compression rings. We went ahead and got the crank turning tool going. We installed connecting rod bearings. We turned the engine on its stand. Okay, we adjusted and prepared ring compressor. We compressed the rings. We installed piston and rod assembly into ring compressor. We made sure we avoided interference problems. We installed piston into the bore. We guided the rod onto the journal and installed rod caps. And we did that 8 times for 8 cylinders. And then we tightened the connecting rod bolts. Okay, we did that. The last thing, and here's the thing. The book says to maybe use one of these fastener stretches. I don't have a fastener stretch. I feel like I can probably get away with it because not checking fastener stretch, because inevitably what happens is when you're torquing these down, you go a little bit more than what you're supposed to, inevitably, just from inertia and momentum. And there's been several times where when I was putting the angle on, I went a little bit past just because you can't stop it fast enough. So I'm feeling fairly confident and very comfortable that these connecting rod bolts are fine, okay? If you think I should have went back and utilized a fastener stretch, let me know in the comments, okay? Do you use a fastener stretch when you put on connecting rod bolts and tighten them? I mean, it seems like a little extra step that, I don't know. It says recommended. It didn't say you absolutely need to do this. It said recommended. So anyway, I went a little bit more torque than probably what I needed. I'm feeling pretty good. All right. The last thing is install crankshaft position sensor. And being sure to use some oil on the O-ring. Install the crank sensor into the passenger side rear of the block. Torque its retaining bolt to 18 foot-pounds. All right, so I have to find it because I purchased all new sensors. I'm not reusing any old sensor. Every sensor that is going on this engine is brand new. So give me a few moments to find it and I'll be right back. All right, so I bought a whole bunch of sensors and I've laid them out on the table here. And I've got some knock sensors here. I've got oil deflector to go in the oil pan. I've got the knock sensors I mentioned. I think this is a temperature sensor. I got the oil pressure sensor. I believe this is the crank position sensor. And I think this is a cam position sensor. I'm not entirely sure. And this is the filter for the oil pressure sender. So anyway, I did find it. I'll be right back. Okay, so I've got my new crankshaft position sensor. I've turned the engine on the stand so that it drops right down in here, nice and easy. I've got my bolt, which actually I'm reusing the old one. But hey, I cleaned it up. I used a wire brush and some mineral spirits, so it's looking pretty good. The instructions say to put a little bit of oil on the O-ring. So got some oil on my fingers here, and I'm just gonna lube up the O-ring here. I gotta adjust this camera here. So anyway, this O-ring's pretty well lubed. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and drop that baby in there. Just pops in there. Dab of oil on this. threads. And how much are we tightening this down to? We are going to 18 foot-pounds. $18 foot-pounds. All right. And we're 10 millimeter. We'll go ahead and get started with this guy. $18 foot-pounds isn't that much. All right. Okay, so I had a little question as to how far down that crankshaft position sensor was to go. There was a little gap in there. I twisted it a few times and got it. But you can kind of see where it sits, where the sensor rides. Let me shine a light in there. See that sensor? Wow, that comes super close. Wow, I shouldn't be putting lights in here. Let me see if I can get a light in there. Yeah, there it is. See how close that is? There's the sensor. That's just like boom, right up against the teeth, but not touching it. Okay, that's your crankshaft position sensor right there. And I just wanted to make sure it was down all the way, okay? Which it is, clearly. Okay, so looking at the book, it says here, install crankshaft position sensor, which I did. And let's see, let's turn the page. And it says, congratulations, short block final assembly is complete. The assembly, if I can get it into focus, the assembly of the short block or bottom end is now complete. Take a well-deserved break. Be sure to cover up your engine if you're going to prevent contamination from airborne dust, bugs, and other unwelcome substances. Then move on to the next step. So how about that? We are done with the short block final assembly.